Good evening. My name is Leon Thomas. Welcome to Real Thoughts and Conversation, the show where we talk about relevant, timely topics and we share opinions in an open format where everyone gets a chance to talk. We listen to each other, we try to hear each other, and maybe something good comes about it. My name is Leon Thomas. You're here for Real Thoughts and Conversation. Let's talk about it. We're here for a special edition of Real Thoughts and Conversation. Usually this show airs on Wednesdays at 7 p.m., and I've been under the weather for about the last 10 days or so. Not under the weather. I've been sick. I'm not going to go into the details about it, but I've been feeling well and feeling pretty good today. So we're glad to do this special, can we call it pop-up edition of Real Thoughts and Conversation. The topics tonight, we're going to cover three things. Number one, we're going to cover the NBA fan behavior. It's absolutely horrible. We're going to talk about the 1921 Tulsa Massacre, and we're going to talk about tennis pro Naomi Osaka and her decision to withdraw from the French Open, but the reasons behind it. Let's bring in our panel for today's show. We have Mr. Edward Sims and Mr. Chris Adams. Edward, Chris, thanks for being here. Glad you're with us. Edward, fill us in. Tell us a quick 20 seconds about you for those that didn't see on a previous show. Give us a 20-second hello, Edward. Go ahead.
I'm a father of one, 26 years in the hospitality industry. Married twice, divorced once. Got a beautiful 16-year-old daughter. Diehard Duke fan, Cubs fan, and Bears fan, and just a genuine all-around good guy.
All right, and he said a Duke fan, so we know that Coach K has announced that he's retiring at the end of next season. And Chris, you kind of have a connection, kind of a feel to Duke. Is your in your introduction? Tell us about that as well, Chris Adams.
I can already tell that I'm going to enjoy sharing the stage with Edward. Originally from Durham, North Carolina, grew up 5 minutes from Duke University. Started out, interestingly enough, as a Carolina fan. Both my parents went to Carolina, but actually transitioned over to becoming a Blue Devil fan. Been in the hospitality industry just about 30 years, based out of Boca Raton, Florida. Worked for a company by the name of BF Saul, based out of Bethesda, Maryland, and father of two, grandfather of three, and it's wonderful to be back tonight.
All right. Thank you both for being here. Both repeat performances for both of you. Great response from the audience, both of you on the shows that you attended. So we're glad to have you here. You see that I'm wearing my Pittsburgh Crawfords jersey in recognition of the Negro League Baseball. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about the NBA fan behavior. So last season, the NBA season ended abruptly, and the fans couldn't attend games because they went to the bubble format down in Orlando. So fans were forced to watch games on television. And as things slowly opened up this year, more and more fans came back, and arenas are packed, and we have things like bottles being thrown at players, popcorn being dumped on players, and other things like that happening. And what are your thoughts? Why is this happening? Is it just fans were pent up and just couldn't wait and feel that they just had to do something and they have a right to do this, or are they just stupid people? What do you think, Chris? Let's start with you on that one. What's your take?
I think no, they don't have a right to do it. It quite frankly has been very appalling. Individuals who are top athletes who are out competing, being the best that they can be. There's certainly a pressure to win, and I think that the fans, be it lack of security, additional alcohol that's being served at the games. I've just found the behavior to be very appalling. And you're right, it's gotten worse as opposed to getting better.
Mm-hmm. Eddie, what do you think?
Well, I think it even started with the PGA Championship and Phil Mickelson getting, accosted almost when he was walking up to the 18th green. I really do think people take a stance that, hey, this is my money that I'm paying to see you. My money's coming to go somewhere towards your salary or towards your purse, and I have a right to be this close to you and tell you how much I love you. And you really don't. Like you don't have, like, to me, I see Russell Westbrook get popcorn dumped on him, and I'm like, if somebody dumped popcorn on me while I was working, which is what he's doing, he's working. That's his job. He's at his job. His job does allow people to watch him perform his job, but he's still working. If somebody assaulted me or did something like that to me at my job, I would be incredibly upset. And in the hospitality industry, I would be very quick to call the authorities and kind of chase whatever punishments could be had, because I don't think people understand. Maybe it is being pent up for a year in your house, that there are consequences to your choices. You're free to choose whatever you want, but you're not free from the consequences of those things. So if you think it's okay to pour popcorn on someone and you get charged with a misdemeanor assault charge, you got to eat that charge. You're going to have to take that.
Now, have there been charges made? I think maybe in one case there was. Eddie, tell me, have there been charges filed against those folks that have done these horrendous things?
I think only in Boston. I think the Boston Garden, or I think they chose to charge the fan for throwing the bottle at Kyrie Irving. I believe they did, and they have every right to. Like, that's, like I said, there's to me personally, I don't fawn. I have my man crushes on people, but I don't. At no point do I think that I have the right to go up to them and take their time and just touch them or do anything to. I respect what they do, but to me, that's an athlete. That's somebody I don't have the right to just say, hey, I went to one of your games. I paid 1/1000th of your salary for that day. You deserve to, you owe me your time, your appreciation for me appreciating you. I don't see it that way. Fan is short for fanatic, and you got to take that into account with some people. With some of these people that I think they honestly think that they have the right to. And a floor seat in Madison Square Garden for a playoff basketball game is not cheap. So it's not like, this is an uncultured swine who's spit at Trey Young. This is somebody who has some money, and they can afford a floor seat close enough to be able to spit at somebody who's playing on the court. So, if you want to teach these people a lesson, keeping them out of Madison Square Garden isn't going to teach them anything. Put them through the court system for a little while and see if they straighten up and change their attitude.
What was that term you called again? Uncultured. What was that?
Uncultured swine.
Oh, okay. Definitely will start to use that one for sure. Chris, what do you think? Do we file charges against them? How do we stop this, Chris?
I think that's one avenue. I think several teams have taken the approach to ban the fans from attending any of the games. I think we've seen similar situations take place in Boston, Philadelphia, Utah. I think Russell Westbrook has been involved in a couple of different instances. I think as Eddie put it, if you're going to make a choice, you have to accept the consequences. And I don't think that anybody is empowered or should be empowered to think that type of behavior is okay, because it's not. It is assault. If you consider, throwing a bottle or throwing this or throwing that at someone, with the thought of doing some sort of harm, I think once again, that does fall into the avenue of some sort of criminal behavior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, let's two more pieces on this. One, the Washington Wizards head coach, Scott Brooks, who previously coached in Oklahoma City, he came out and said that when the arenas ban the fan, that they really can't ban the fan. What they're really able to do is say, we're not going to allow you to buy a ticket from us. And the example that he used was What if a fan was a season ticket holder in New York, as an example, goes on to the third market and buys tickets through one of the ticket resellers, through a third party reseller, grows a beard, puts on glasses, and wears a hat, that they can't police it, that saying you're banned really means nothing. What's your take on that, Chris? What do you think?
To hear how you described it, you're exactly right. If there's not any sort of identification, which there's not, you go, to the game, you show your ticket, and you don't show ID, and you just walk right in. You're exactly right, and I think it's more a matter of trying to send a message, from the team's perspective, that this behavior is not acceptable, and it's not what we deem as being appropriate. But if somebody's going to go to that extreme, it is unfortunate, but I think Coach Brooks is right that you really do not have a way to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that, if you've been banned, that this person will not somehow find a way to get back into that particular arena.
Eddie, what do you think?
It's 100% right, but I think at that point maybe you increase the consequence, like having Madison Square Garden or I forget what is it? Is it the Verizon Center? I always keep wanting to call it.
They change names like crazy, right?
The establishment banning somebody is one thing. I really do believe that in this instance, something like that, maybe it should come with a complimentary misdemeanor charge along with the just something to give a definite consequence, because it's right, like that's like saying you can't, you're banned from this Walmart, you can't shop at this Walmart. I'm pretty sure I can walk in there whenever, but if there's a an order restricting you from getting you've got to be 150 feet from this establishment at all times, and if you're caught anywhere near it, then you're going to get arrested again. You've got to give some kind of consequences of substance, because just telling them no, we're not going to let you pay for a ticket, but if somebody else buys you a ticket, you're still allowed in. Like it gives somebody an out. I think the punishment and the needs to be stiffer, because like I said, they're athletes, they make millions and millions of dollars. That doesn't mean they're open to that kind of disrespect. If you're with somebody in the street and somebody spit on you and just tried to spit on you, that would almost 97% of the time, I'm pretty sure it's going to start a fight. It's actually it's at least going to start a conversation about why somebody's trying to spit on you. That kind of stuff, I don't think you can just police with I think it's a slap on the wrist to say you can't come here anymore. You've got to make it tougher. I think the smart thing would be for the organization or the building to make that like a mandatory thing. Put it on the ticket and like, hey, look, if you do something that's disrespectful, gets you kicked out of here, you're going to face charges, and leave it at that. Was it the old Veteran Stadium had a courtroom in the basement for the drugs fans that did stupid things and violated the rules and to the point where they would get arrested. That was right in the bottom of the stadium.
Right there in the stadium. Yeah.
There's no reason why you can't do that again.
Yeah.
Or make it a substantial consequence.
I hope the NBA, the cities, the teams, the arenas, I hope they figure it out, because it's horrible as a sports fan that every night you turn on to watch a game or early morning to watch ESPN or whatever sports show, and you see this type of activity. It's disheartening. So I hope they do something about it. Let's talk about this. The 1921 Tulsa Massacre. Now, I'm going to take just a couple minutes to kind of summarize what happened and then give a kind of a personal reflection to it, and then ask a couple of conversation topics. In the early 1900s, 1910 to 1920, Tulsa was a thriving area for Black businesses, for Black business owners. there was a section called Greenwood where blacks owned businesses and homes. I'm talking restaurants, hotels, and just about every business that was out there. It was in Tulsa in the Greenwood section. There was an incident where a black gentleman got on an elevator, and apparently there was a female white elevator operator, and they touched each other. He touched her. Apparently, either he fell, something happened, and he was arrested. And the Tulsa newspaper said, "We have to find this guy," and all hell broke loose. And one of the things that happened, many of the things that happened, was that whites in Tulsa went to the Greenwood section and started burning, tearing down businesses, black owned businesses in Tulsa. They did that, and they also bombed that area of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Those business owners could not recoup their losses through insurances because the insurance companies all had statements about if there's any riot, race relations thing or anything like that, that their policies would no longer be valid. So we had folks that lost a great deal of wealth. Now, I didn't learn about that in history class. I don't know if you guys did. We'll talk about it when it comes to you. But now we just had the 100th anniversary of that, and it's been on numerous television networks. President Biden was there earlier this week giving a speech about that. And so the first thing that I want to talk about is what do we do? What should be done, or should anything be done to make those citizens, those families? There are still some survivors that were young, that were 4 or 5 years old, that remember that, but also those families that suffered. And it's not like we don't know where those locations are. There are plaques, memorial plaques in the street, in the sidewalk, very similar to what you'll see on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. There are plaques like that in Tulsa that say, this business used to be here. And many of them were taken away by the county, by the state to build stadiums. They divided the town, the area of Greenwood, by putting an expressway in it. And folks in that town are saying that something needs to be done to make them whole. Mm-hmm. So, Chris, let's start with you. What are your thoughts about that whole thing? But first, tell me, when did you first learn about this? So tell us.
I must admit, I did not learn about this growing up. I remember back in 1996, 75 years after this happened, they did a study to really, I think, determine the impact and really to look at it, unlike at any other period of time up to that point. This commission actually did a very extensive and exhaustive study, both on what happened, how it happened, certainly some of the consequences as a result of that. And you're right, there was a lot of, real estate, a lot of, wealth that was lost. In their final report in 2001, they took about 5 years to put this together. One of their suggestions is that there should have been some sort of reparations to the survivors. Now, there was some things that were done as far as setting up scholarships, and you're right, memorializing with plaques and this and that. But I think they fell short in terms of, frankly, what should have taken place. Now, some may argue that, should we really benefit the survivors? My response to that is absolutely. I think that there needs to be a recognition about what happened and try to, if not make it right, at least acknowledge through some sort of reparations.
Mm-hmm. Edward, what do you think? When did you first learn about this, Eddie? And what are your thoughts on what we should do now?
To be honest with you, I've heard about it. I didn't really do a lot of research until very recently, only because it's gonna sound very 2021. But I saw a TikTok of just kind of commemorating it, and I'm somebody who likes to understand history and go through it, and we definitely didn't learn about it in history class or U.S. history class when I was going to school in 1993. But we had some opportunities to do. I did a large report, and this is getting off topic, but I did my own research on race relations and the history of racism in the United States for a U.S. history project. But from what I understand, from what I've read and what I've understand, and obviously based on what happened and the aftermath of it, once this report came out, 80 years later, there weren't a lot of surviving people left to kind of give reparations to. So I think they set up some maybe like 300 scholarships or something like that. And I don't know what the how much of the how many actual people of the surviving bloodlines from that massacre happened, are actually still alive. But that's what they put in that's what the state agreed to do back in 2003, I think, from what I read. They wrote it into law, the reparations and the economic development for Greenwood and trying to do all of these things. If that's what they wrote and that's what they said they're going to do, then you definitely need to make it right for the families that survived. I mean, it's horrible, some of the stuff that I read that they've done, and I'm sure I didn't get the full version of it. I like to go down rabbit holes when I'm trying to research stuff. So, it's incredibly disgusting portrayal of what our country was in 1921, and it's not far from what it was. That's kind of a microcosm of what it was for the entire country, just not to that extent in some places, to a worse extent in some other places, depending on where you were in the South. So if there's more to be done, then they should do it without hesitation.
They had, on one of the reports that I saw on CNN, they had a gentleman who is the chairman of an investment company, a Black gentleman, chairman of an investment company. And he mentioned that the value of the land that the hotel was on, apparently was a 54-room full-service hotel, that the value of that hotel today would be around $100 million. And I started thinking about that's one family's wealth there in Greenwood section of Tulsa. And that family doesn't have that. And the city has promised economic development. And we all know that sometimes when they say economic development, it can mean many, many different things.
Not necessarily for your benefit.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, I'm wondering, I'm on the fence on when we talk about reparations, because of slavery and the 40 acres and a mule. Where's my mule? Where's my acres and all that? But this is the one that I'm thinking, man, if there's ever a time for us to for our country to financially do something right, I can really see how this would be it. What do y'all think it should do? And where's the money come from? Is this the state of Oklahoma? Is it the city of Tulsa? Is this the United States? Edward, let's start with you.
Well, I think we've seen through the pandemic that depending on the situation and the severity of the issue, we can make money happen. Like I don't know how the state is funding the extra money that they're paying in unemployment, but somehow they're doing it. But that's beside the point. Like Tulsa's a small spot. I don't want to literally minimize this situation, but it's not a big area that you need to take care of. I don't think it's going to be in the billions of dollars to make this right. Whether it's the city of Tulsa, whether it's the state, based on the brief stuff that I saw on the commission report, it looked like the city and state were kind of encouraging this behavior, or at least allowing it to happen, and made sure that nobody was able to recoup any of their losses. Mm-hmm. So if the state was culpable as well as everybody else, the state can open up their coffers.
We can find the money somewhere. Right?
Yeah. You can make it happen.
You
I
can.
hear you. Chris, what do you think?
Well, and what's interesting is, a short time after this happened, there was a conscious effort to rebuild the particular, Greenwood area that had been destroyed, quite frankly. And they were somewhat successful in doing that against, the city and the state to a certain degree. There was a lot of pushback. So it was a very difficult road ahead for those who actually wanted to redevelop that area. So, if it's not reparations to individuals, as far as survivals or survivors, then I think, at the very least, there needs to be economic development that actually has a direct impact in individuals and areas that are high risk. And so I think, there's any number of things that can actually be done, but I think there's got to be a lesson learned, like Edward said, and I think there also has to be, what good can come out of this. And I think that in any, adverse situation, there are lessons learned, there are consequences that must be acknowledged, but I think there's some positive developments that can take place as a result of that. And it's got to be something that's real, genuine, and I think most importantly, sustainable.
Mhm. I heard you say economic development, and Eddie, you and I laughed about it a second ago. We talked about economic development, making sure it's going to be something that benefits the people. Government can come in and say economic development and put a road in, and call it economic development. So I agree with you. I hope that we can get something done, and I hope those that are listening, that are watching the show, chime in with your comments on what should happen, what should be done in Tulsa, to make this right, or has it been made right in your opinion? We'd love to hear from you. Let's talk about this now. Let's talk about tennis professional Naomi Osaka and her the whole battle that she had with those that are running the French Open, and her ultimately saying, I'm withdrawing from the tournament. She indicated that she has anxiety for attending the press conferences post match, and that also that happens to be a trigger for her when it comes to her depression. And so she's made a decision that she was going to withdraw and take care of herself. Now, a few days prior to her withdrawing, the administrators of the French Open told her that she would be fined $1,500 for not appearing at press conferences. And the minute that she decided to withdraw, they changed their tune a little and said, we applaud you for taking care of yourself. And the National Tennis Federation, or United Worldwide Tennis Federation, whatever it was, made a similar announcement. So here's what I'd like to hear your comments on. In terms of athletes having responsibilities, so to speak, and I'll use that in air quotes, to attend media functions and talk to fans, and balancing that with their mental health, what's the right thing? How should leagues, how should federations, how should this even be handled moving forward? Chris, what's your take?
Well, two things. One, I think there was a missed opportunity from the Tennis Federation. I think that if you look during COVID, one of the bigger conversation pieces has been the toll and the impact it's had on individuals' mental health. You look at it from kids, for example, who are having to go to school at home, parents who are basically trying to do more with less. But when you look at athletes, what a courageous thing for her to do. And anybody who has actually, acknowledged that they're having some sort of mental challenge, to have the courage to be able to admit that. You're a public figure. All eyes are on you in terms of what you do, what you say, how you carry yourself. That's a lot of pressure. For someone to, in any sport, to acknowledge that I am anxious, that I'm having some challenges, that I need help. I think we all need to see that as quite frankly an example that we should follow. There are a lot of individuals who still feel that there is a stigma attached with acknowledging that they're having some sort of mental health issues. And I think until we as a society, never mind sports, but as a society, accept that this is real and that individuals need help and need to feel comfortable enough to seek help without having to deal with the consequences or being scorned. I think we are all missing an opportunity. And there's other sports that I believe that have been very supportive of their athletes who have acknowledged that they're having mental health challenges, and they've allowed them and helped them and supported them to get treatment to be able to get well.
Mm-hmm. Edward, what are your thoughts?
I'm not a big fan of the media questions and that kind of stuff. Like I love how Marshawn Lynch handled the Super Bowl. Just saying I'm here just so I don't get fined. I love I can't think of his name right now. The guy in Los Angeles, Kawhi Leonard, who refuses to give any kind of a soundbite, stays very quiet, very unanimated during his press conferences. Kyrie Irving, who uses that time to speak about what he wants to and doesn't necessarily answer every question. I think a majority of the questions that come out of reporters' mouths really aren't or what they're asking really aren't what people need to hear or are interested in finding out. I don't understand the point of media obligations, but I'm sure it has something tied to the TV contracts and everything else. I know Coach K used to hate having to do halftime interviews in the middle of the NCAA tournament. He thought it was the stupidest thing in the world and refused to do them for a long time. He would send his assistants until I think the NCAA and CBS were like, "Hey, look, man, we need you have to do it." And he did them begrudgingly. I think that kind of access it's not my cup of tea. Maybe some people need that. I really don't. But I don't think for the most part we don't see our athletes, our professional athletes, as actual humans, and they are. They have their trials and tribulations just like everybody else. My dad told me a long time ago. He was a 20-year Marine, and he was like, when people tell me thank you for your service, I appreciate it, but don't treat me like I'm something anything more than a regular person. My job is to be a soldier. That's my job. He used to tell me, he was like, these guys aren't gods. These military guys, you appreciate their service, but at the end of the day, sometimes they go home and they're raging alcoholics. Sometimes they go home and they're wife beaters. They're normal people just like everybody else. They have their problems. You got to respect that, and I applaud Osaka for walking away from it and saying, I don't want to deal with this. This is a trigger for me, and I can't take it. And listening to sports talk radio on the way into work every morning, they made a great point. Her social media following is probably touching more people than the interview that she's giving right there at the after a match or before a match. I generally don't see them unless they show it as a bit leading up to the event. So her social, she can reach her fans and interact with her fans and give them whatever information she thinks she needs to give them that way. Then there's no reason for her to do a required media obligation.
Mm-hmm. Something both of you talked about was that this whole idea of mental health, that everyone, there's such a stigma behind it, right? And when pro athletes come out and say, I am suffering, I know what my triggers are, that's got to make it more comfortable, so to speak, for those regular people. You're both in hotel management, so for that hotel manager who has a trigger, they need to recognize it. And I hope that this is something that opens the door for continued conversation about it, but also for the leagues and others to think about what they're doing, what you're saying. Edward, you talked about the interview questions. My wife and I were watching the Baltimore Orioles the other night, and we watched the post-game press conference with one of the Orioles. And the guy's question was, it seems like you're having a lot of fun playing baseball. Is it fair to assume that this is the most fun you've ever had playing? And I'm thinking that has nothing to do with this game. I'm interested to hear how this 22-year-old athlete answers it. And he goes, the most fun playing? Are you kidding me? I've been playing this game since I was 6. I get paid millions of dollars to play a kid's game, and you think this is the most fun? Absolutely not. I had fun here. I've had fun there. I had fun here. So, no, this isn't the most fun. I always have fun when I'm playing. So, when you talk about, the stupid questions, here's Naomi, maybe after a game, after a match, and she's like, I'm tired. I need something to eat. And they say, tell me about that when you were down for love. Tell me about that. And so it's got to draw on you. But I'm glad both of you talked about the whole mental aspect of it and how that's gotta hurt you. And folks need to be aware that everyone's suffering, and mental health, it makes us all healthy. So thank you both for bringing that up. I appreciate it. Chris and Edward, one final piece. Now let's kind of bring it all together here. Excuse me. When we talk about NBA players, we talk about the massacre in Tulsa. We talk about Naomi Osaka. The three subjects of those conversations, 90% of the NBA is black. So we're talking about black athletes. We're talking about something that's happened to a black community. What do you think the idea is? What should anyone do to look at those big pieces together that have all become newsworthy in the last week? And how do we approach it from an overall societal view to say, look at things that are going on, and do other things like this happen in other industries, other businesses? How do we look at it on a broad picture and try to do something about all of this? Eddie, we'll start with you first. Chris, you'll have the final word.
I don't know. I look at it, and it was it goes back to your first show where I think somebody said, the color that gets the most is green. It all comes down to me, it's a money thing, and just we've got to be better as a society. We've got to be better as individuals, and we've got to understand that we're not as entitled to things as we think we are. For like these fans think they're entitled to treat these players away. To a sense, me, they pay money to go see them, so they're paying their salary so I can do what I want. That's a kind of a very slave master mentality. I own you because I pay part of what you do. That kind of stuff. It's so it's ugly. It really is, and the money that's involved is high. And I don't care who you are. You don't deserve to get popcorn thrown on you. You don't deserve to be spit on. You don't. And where I grew up, those all are fight starters. So you can't take that path. You can't. We've got a mindset that we need to change, and that's the biggest problem I think we're facing right now. We've got minds and thoughts and the way people perceive things that need to be adjusted, because it's not. It's getting too far. We can't just brush it under the rug. Oh, well, everybody's been cooped up in their house for a year, so it's okay. You've got to know that there's consequences for your actions. You've got to know that if you say you're going to do something, you admit your fault, and you've got to pay your penance. You got to pay your penance. In terms of with the Tulsa Massacre, you've got, if you said you're going to do something, you've got to follow up, and you've got to be, from a hospitality perspective, you don't only have to recover, you've got to exceed their expectations. So it's not just, hey, we said we're going to give you $10, so here's your $10, like here's your $15, and here's a complimentary bag of nuts and some waters and everything else. You've got to overcompensate for what you've done. But we've got a long ways to go to become a better society and a better people.
Mm-hmm. Chris, final word to you.
Very interesting point. I think if you look back on what happened 100 years ago, do similar things happen 100 years later? Some may say not as overtly, some may say no. But I think that each one of us have a different journey, and I think one of the solutions is we have got to continue to have these type of conversations. They're not going to be comfortable. They're not sometimes going to be pleasant, but we have to confront what we hope to fix and improve upon. I think this platform is a very very healthy way to address that, and I think we have to also recognize that each of us come from a different society or have a different journey. But just because I may not have gone through what Leon or Eddie or anyone else has gone through doesn't make your journey less important. So I think that we have got to, as a society, be willing to put our own personal opinions to the side and really seek to better understand where the other person's coming from. Are we going to always agree? No. But I think that we have got to do a lot more listening so that we can do a lot more learning. And I think when that happens, and when we have a better appreciation of where the other person's coming from, that's where I think we start to see some improvement. But there's so many opportunities that are in front of us each and every day that I don't know if we fully take advantage of, to better understand where each one is coming from. So good conversations, good topics, very relevant topics. And, the last thing I would say is, for anyone who's listening, if you are going through a tough time, if you feel like there is a mental health challenge that you're going through, you're not alone. You don't need to keep it within yourself. There are so many people that are more than willing to help you, but for them to help you, you've got to have the courage to raise your hand and say, I need help. And I think that if we continue to do that, we're going to become a much healthier society.
Mm-hmm. Great points. Thank you both. Thank you both for your input, your conversation. Chris Adams, thank you. Edward Sims, thank you. Folks, this has been another episode of Real Thoughts and Conversation, where we talk about relevant issues, timely issues, get your opinions on it, and talk about not only what the issues are, but how it makes others feel and what we can do about it. That's what we talk about here on Real Thoughts and Conversation. We'll be back next Wednesday. That's going to be, what is today's date? What's today's date, Eddie? Edward? Today's date is June 3rd. So we'll be back on June 9th at our regular time at 7:00 right here on YouTube. And we'll be going live on Facebook and LinkedIn as well next week. The subject of next week's conversation is pay. Are employers paying enough? And are those that have graduate degrees, should they be paid more than folks who don't for doing the same job? And everything kind of tied in related to that. That's our subject of next week's Real Thoughts and Conversation. So be sure to join in. If you'd like to be a panelist on Real Thoughts and Conversations, it's real simple. You send me an email, and a number of you have done that. The email box is starting to roll in and flow, and I appreciate it. The email address is Real Thoughts and Conversation. That's Real Thoughts and Conversation at gmail.com. Real Thoughts and Conversation at gmail.com. Thank you again to Chris Adams and Edward Sims for being our guest. It's been great having you here to talk about it. This is Real Thoughts and Conversation, where we talk about it.